Hi, Justine again. So today we're going to look at Christmas traditions and where does this all come from? Is it from the Victorian times, the Germans, or Coca-Cola? So who's had the big imprint on Christmas? What made me even think of doing this? I've got friends that don't put up a Christmas tree, and there's definitely no Father Christmas, and there is no snowmen and those sort of decorations. They use the nativity play as their decorations. So I just wanted to understand better, understand where they're coming from, understand why they make a stand against something like a Christmas tree or the jolly friendly old Father Christmas. I mean, after all, what can be wrong with him? So in this quest to understand that, I just learned a little bit more about all our traditions. So let's start with the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree was first, the Romans used to decorate a fir tree in their temples during Saturnalia, which is a feast to honor Saturn, the god of agriculture. So the god of agriculture was the predecessor to Christmas. In North Europe, people planted cherry and hawthorn plants. They also built pyramids of fruit and put candles out. And this was to keep away the evil spirits and illness. These were put up during the winter solstice, so the shortest day of the year, and as a reminder that spring will come. Another predecessor was the paradise tree, a fir tree decorated with apples that represented the Garden of Eden on Adam and Eve Day. I didn't even know there was an Adam and Eve's Day. And that fell on December the 24th. It's believed, though, that the first Christmas tree that was brought into a house was by Martin, the German theologian Martin Luther, who was walking in the forest, and when he saw the stars through the trees, he thought it was so beautiful. So he took a tree home and he attached candles on the end of each branch. So the Germans used to decorate their trees with edible goods and with glass ornaments. Tinsel was actually also invented by the Germans, and this was an offcut of very thin silver. Electric lights, however, these were first created in 1895 by Ralph Morris, an American telephonist. The Christmas tree made it to Britain in the 1830s, and 11 years later, in 1841, Prince Albert set up a tree in Windsor Castle. In 1846, the royal family was sketched standing around the Christmas tree, after which this practice became very fashionable. The story behind Santa Claus and the Christmas stocking. So where does Santa Claus and Father Christmas come from? So Father Christmas starts with St. Nicholas. He was a bishop who lived in Myra in Asia Minor, which is now known as Turkey, in the 4th century. He had a reputation for giving to the poor and being kind to children. Legend has it that he dropped a bag of gold through a chimney into a man's house who couldn't pay the dowry for his daughter. And this bag of gold actually fell into a stocking that was hanging there to dry. St. Nicholas actually did that for this gentleman's second child as well. So this gentleman spent ages trying to find out who it was, and when he did, St. Nicholas begged him not to let anyone know who it was. But people found out and the legend grew. So then after that, anyone who was ever given a secret gift, they always said it was from St. Nicholas. However, in the 16th century, the sort of legend of St. Nicholas was not popular. And that's where they started drawing the first images of Father Christmas, or as they called it, Old Man Christmas. In 1616, one of the artists and storytellers started adding on the beard and the whole always entering through the chimney. And this Father Christmas or Old Man Christmas had sons and daughters with names like Carol and Mince Pie. Then in the Victorian times, the Victorians rediscovered St. Nicholas through the poetry and the proses, and they re-brought that story back in. And Clement Moore in 2020 first wrote a poem about St. Nicholas flying from house to house on a reindeer with 8 reindeers pulling a sled and filling up Christmas stockings. Some Europeans celebrate St. Nicholas Day, which is on the 6th of December. And how do they do this? They leave clogs and shoes outside to be filled with presents and sweets. So, why does Santa wear red? So, most people believe it was due to a successful campaign by Coca-Cola, who did the red robe and the white trim in the Coca-Cola colors. But the reality is the bishops wore those sort of robes, and they wore all sorts of colors of robes. It was only in the 19th century that Father Christmas's robe, the white trim, became a fur-trimmed suit. So St. Nicholas was drawn throughout history in various forms, usually thin, intellectual, and even frightening at times. It was Coca-Cola, though, so they had a big influence, that in their advert drew this image of this rotund, jolly, white-haired man we're so familiar with today. So another tradition is turkey. Where did that come from? It's one of the most popular meals to eat now on Christmas. So turkey, we first made it to the United Kingdom when King Henry VIII ate turkey on Christmas Day because it was imported from America, so it was all very fancy. In the 1950s, this dish was brought to all the people in the UK because refrigeration had been designed. Traditionally, though, a lot of Europe ate goose, boar, and peacock. However, there's still countries to this day that traditionally a country's meal is different. The Swedes eat pickled herrings and meatballs, Mexico eats tamales, and South Italy eats fried eel. What is interesting to know about Father Chris, I already told you that about him being painted because of the Coca-Cola. All right, swiftly moving on. Why do we eat mince pies? So here's an interesting one. Of all the Christmas things, what did you think was going to hold true to the Christian tradition or to highlight baby Jesus? And mince pies is one of them. They were originally an oblong shape, and it was to be reminded of the cradle or the manger that Jesus was born in. So these mince pies traditionally were made of mutton, and when the Crusaders came back from the Middle East with all the spices, they added the spices to that. It was only in the 18th century that they started becoming sweet with the import of sugar from the slave plantations in the West Indies. Christmas cards. So Christmas cards in 1843, Sir Henry Cole, a civil servant and educator, and his friend, John Horsley, an artist, produced the first Christmas card of a family gathering. Then the next one was of giving. They went on and designed a few, which to this day, a lot of their prints are still used. The famous one with the robin or the snow scenes. So it was only in 1843 that Christmas cards came as a greeting, as a message to others. Boxing Day. Boxing Day is closely related to the church. So the church would gather things through this period, food, stuff, and fruits and that. And on Boxing Day, and alms, and on Boxing Day, the poor or the disadvantaged could come to the church and they would receive a box of goods. The legend also has it that in the UK, the sort of well-to-do people they would put together a box of food and they would give it to their tradespeople, their servants, as a tip, a seasonal tip. Crackers. Crackers must have something to do with Christmas. In fact, they have absolutely nothing to do with the Christian faith or St. Nicholas. Crackers were invented in the Victorian times, and it was a sweet maker who thought of clever packaging when sales went down from his sweets, how to pick up sales, and he designed the cracker. So the tradition that we still have that is the closest related to the Christian coming of Jesus, of Christ, is actually the Advent calendar. So the Advent calendar is traditionally always come from Christians, and it starts the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas Day. So it begins that Sunday anywhere between the 27th of November and the 3rd of December. And it symbolizes the coming of Christ. It started with the German Protestants in the early 19th century and marks the days of Advent by burning a candle, or they used to draw on the walls with chalk. The first handmade wooden Advent calendar was created in 1851. And by the early 20th century, the first printed Advent calendar existed. Gerard Lang later added small doors in the 1920s, while short Bible verses and traditional pictures were added behind the doors in the 1930s. Today, Advent is still practiced by a lot of people, but we have often started on the first of the month. The significance of Christmas is that the story doesn't change. This coming of this incredible baby that would change the world, and especially people in the faith, from being under these many, many rules, this legalized faith, to a faith where there was primarily one rule, and that was to love God and to love yourself and to love each other. So this baby, innocent baby that was born, this acknowledgement of the day, the night before and the day he entered, would later on to become what we would call the bread of life in John, Christ Emmanuel, Matthew, Prince of Peace, Isaiah. Christ is the Redeemer, Job. Christ is the Shepherd, John. Christ is the King of Kings, Revelations. The Lamb of God, John. Living water, John. The light of the world, John. The Word, John. The true vine, John. The rock in 1 Corinthians. The author and the finisher in Hebrews. The morning star in Revelations. And the everlasting Father in Isaiah. So, as you go into every Christmas, go and read the story anew. Find something else. Every year you can learn a little bit more about the person of Jesus Christ. So the celebration, that moment, that evening where we reflect just before we welcome the birth of Christ. So what I did want to do was show you our newest Advent calendars this year that my family is doing. But my dogs have just run off, so I'll show you them. So this year, the Pooches have Advent calendars. Pet Advent calendar. So what's so beautiful is everyone can now celebrate. It's not just children or adults. This special time in history where we mark the coming of the birth of Jesus Christ.